I caught my wife sneaking into my brother's hospital room at midnight. At first, I thought it was love and concern until I saw what she was holding. It all started with a feeling, an unsettling suspicion that gnawed at the back of my mind. At first, I ignored it, chalking it up to stress and exhaustion. My brother, Ryan, had been in a terrible car accident 2 weeks ago, and ever since then, my life had become a blur of hospital visits, restless nights, and unanswered questions. Doctors said he was lucky to be alive. The crash had left him with a severe concussion, several broken ribs, and a fractured leg. Though he was stable, they kept him heavily sedated to manage the pain. I spent hours sitting by his bedside, waiting for him to wake up, but it never happened. The only thing keeping me going was the hope that one day, he'd open his eyes and tell me everything was going to be okay. Emily, my wife, had been supportive, or at least, that's what I thought. She had always been close to Ryan, treating him like a younger brother. She visited the hospital often, bringing food, fresh clothes, and sitting with me as we waited for news. But then, her behavior started to change. She became distant. It started with small things, missed calls, vague excuses about work, and late nights spent running errands. I wouldn't have thought much of it if it weren't for the way she looked at me when I asked where she had been. It was as if she was hiding something, but I couldn't figure out what. Then, I noticed something strange. Every night, after visiting hours had ended, she would disappear. I assumed she was going home to rest, but one night, when I returned to our apartment, she wasn't there. I called her, no answer. I tried again. Still nothing. That's when the suspicion turned into certainty. The next night, I followed her. It was nearly midnight when she left the house, dressed in dark clothing, her face set in an expression of determination. She didn't notice me trailing behind her as she drove to the hospital, parking in the farthest lot, away from the main entrance. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her slip through the side door, the one usually reserved for staff. What the hell was she doing? I crept through the hallway, keeping my distance, making sure my footsteps were silent against the linoleum floors. The hospital was eerily quiet at this hour, just the occasional beep of a monitor or the shuffle of a night nurse. Emily moved with purpose, heading straight for Ryan's room, and for a moment, I hesitated. Maybe she was just checking on him. Maybe she was worried and couldn't sleep. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But then I saw it. A glint of silver in her hand. A syringe. My blood turned ice. She stepped closer to Ryan's bed, her hand trembling slightly as she pulled off the cap. My heart was racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. I had to do something, anything. I lunged forward. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, my voice harsher than I intended. Emily gasped, spinning around, the syringe slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. Her eyes were wide, her face pale. "Mark, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, incredulous. "What the hell are you doing sneaking into my brother's room in the middle of the night with a goddamn syringe?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She glanced down at the syringe, then back at me, her lips pressing into a thin line. "It's not what you think," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped forward, picking up the syringe, my hands shaking. "Then what is it, Emily? Because this sure as hell looks like you were about to inject something into my unconscious brother." She swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the door as if she was contemplating running. "It's just a sedative," she insisted. "The doctors prescribed it. He's been restless." I was just trying to help. I narrowed my eyes. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." I turned the syringe over in my hands, reading the label. The name of the drug didn't look familiar. My stomach twisted with dread. Without another word, I marched out of the room, Emily calling after me. I didn't stop until I found a night nurse at the station down the hall. "I need you to tell me what this is," I said, handing her the syringe. She frowned, examining it closely. Then her expression darkened. "Where did you get this?" "In my brother's room," I said, my voice shaking. "My wife had it." The nurse's face went pale. "This isn't a sedative," she said slowly. "This is potassium chloride." The words didn't register at first, but then, like a freight train, the meaning hit me. Potassium chloride. A drug used in lethal injections. A drug that could stop the heart instantly. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I turned back toward the hallway, my breath coming in short gasps. Emily was gone. She had run. I stood there, my mind reeling, my entire body numb. My wife, my loving, devoted wife, had just tried to kill my brother. And I had no idea why. My hands were still shaking as I stared down the empty hallway where Emily had disappeared. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: anger, disbelief, fear. I needed answers. And I needed them fast. I turned back to the nurse, who was still staring at me with concern. "We need to call the police," I said, my voice hoarse. "Now." She hesitated but then nodded. "Come with me. I'll call security." I followed her down the hall to the security station, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from my chest. She picked up the phone and dialed, her voice urgent as she explained the situation. Within minutes, a hospital security officer arrived. "Sir, we need to understand exactly what happened," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. "Can you walk us through it?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I followed my wife here. She snuck into my brother's room after midnight. I caught her with a syringe. And when I took it to the nurse, she told me it was potassium chloride. The officer's expression hardened. "Do you have any idea why your wife would want to harm your brother?" I swallowed, my throat dry. "No, but I intend to find out." The officer exchanged a glance with the nurse before nodding. "We'll review the security footage and alert the authorities." "Do you have a recent photo of your wife?" I pulled out my phone and showed them a picture of Emily. As they took note of her appearance, a sickening realization settled in my gut. Emily had been hiding something from me for weeks. But this wasn't just some minor secret. This was something much, much worse. And whatever it was, my brother had been at the center of it. I was taken to a waiting room while security reviewed the footage. Every passing minute felt like an hour. I ran my fingers through my hair, my mind racing. What had Emily gotten herself into? How long had she been planning this? More importantly, had she done something like this before? After what felt like an eternity, the security officer returned, his face grim. "Mr. Evans, we have the footage. You need to see this." I followed him into a small room where a monitor displayed a paused frame from the hospital's security cameras. He pressed play. Emily appeared on screen, dressed in dark clothing, moving quickly down the hallway. She kept looking over her shoulder as if she was afraid of being followed. When she reached Ryan's room, she hesitated, gripping the syringe tightly in her hand before slipping inside. Then, another figure appeared. My breath caught in my throat. A man. He was tall, wearing a hood, and his face was obscured from the camera. He followed Emily into the room, his movements deliberate, precise. "Who the hell is that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The officer shook his head. "We don't know. But your wife wasn't alone." My stomach churned. Emily wasn't acting on her own. She had an accomplice. But why? And who was this man? I barely registered the rest of the officer's words as he explained they were escalating the case. The police had already been notified, and they would be tracking Emily as a suspect in an attempted murder investigation. My head spun. I left the security room and walked aimlessly down the hall, my thoughts racing. Who was that man? Was he the one truly pulling the strings? And if so, was Emily a willing participant or just another pawn? My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to reality. I pulled it out, my heart nearly stopping when I saw the name on the screen. Ryan. For a moment, I could only stare at it. Then, with shaking hands, I answered. "Ryan." His voice was weak, barely above a whisper. "Mark." Tears burned my eyes. "Jesus, Ryan, you're awake. Are you okay?" A ragged breath. "Emily, you have to stop her. She's in danger." My blood ran cold. "Ryan, what are you talking about?" "She tried to kill you." "No, you don't understand." His breathing was labored. "She's being forced. They have something on her. If she doesn't do what they say, they'll kill her." The room spun. My world, already shattered, cracked further. "Who, Ryan? Who are they?" I don't know their names, but I found something before the accident. That's why they came after me. Emily wasn't supposed to be part of it, but they threatened her. She had no choice. My mind raced, trying to process everything. Emily wasn't acting alone. She wasn't just a monster, she was a target. And whatever Ryan had discovered had put both of them in danger. "Ryan, listen to me," I said, my voice shaking. "Do you remember what you found? Where is it?" A pause. Then, my laptop. My pulse spiked. "Where?" "Home, hidden behind the false panel in my desk." "Mark, don't let them get to it first." Before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. I stood there, my phone still pressed to my ear, my entire body numb. Emily hadn't just tried to kill Ryan. She had been trying to survive. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the hospital waiting room, my mind racing with 1,000 different possibilities. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, her expression when I caught her, the panic in her voice, the way she had run without a second thought. The security officer had already sent a request for the hospital's surveillance footage. They promised to call me as soon as they had something concrete, but I wasn't willing to wait. I needed to understand what the hell was happening. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old messages, trying to see if there was anything suspicious that I might have overlooked. Emily had been acting strange for weeks. Maybe there was something I had missed, an odd message, a phone call from an unknown number, anything. And then, I found it. A text from Ryan, sent just a few days before his accident. At the time, it had seemed insignificant, but now it sent a chill down my spine. Ryan, Mark, we need to talk. It's important. About Emily. I had never responded. I'd been busy, and I had assumed whatever it was could wait. But it hadn't waited. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on my phone. What had Ryan found out? Was it something bad enough that Emily had tried to silence him permanently? The idea sent a shudder through me. My wife, someone I had trusted more than anyone, had just tried to kill my brother. And I had no idea why. I stood up abruptly. I couldn't just sit here doing nothing. If Emily had gone to such lengths to make sure Ryan never woke up, it meant he had the answers I needed. But he was still unconscious. And that left me with only one option. I had to dig deeper myself. I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I half expected to see Emily's car parked outside, but she was still gone. Maybe she was running. Maybe she was hiding. But either way, I had the perfect opportunity to find out what she had been keeping from me. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. For the first time, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a crime scene. I went straight to the office. Emily kept all of her personal files in a locked drawer in the desk, and I had never bothered to ask for the key. But tonight, I wasn't asking. I grabbed a screwdriver from the kitchen and forced the lock open. The drawer gave way with a sharp crack, and I pulled it open, rifling through the contents. Bank statements, contracts, receipts, and then, near the bottom, a thick manila envelope with Ryan's name written across it in black ink. My stomach twisted. I tore it open and pulled out a stack of papers. The first thing I saw was a bank statement, one I didn't recognize. It was an account under Emily's name, but the deposits, they were massive. Thousands of dollars. Transferred in from different sources. And then I saw another name. Ryan's business partner. My pulse pounded in my ears as I flipped through more documents. The pieces were falling into place. And the picture they were painting was horrifying. Ryan had been investigating something that involved Emily. And then I saw it. The final confirmation. A printed email. Sent from Ryan to Emily. Ryan, Emily, I know what you did. You stole from the company. I have the records. If you don't tell Mark the truth, I will. My breath hitched. My brother had found out Emily was stealing. And instead of coming clean, she had tried to shut him up. First with the accident. And when that hadn't worked, she had come back to finish the job herself. I staggered backward, dropping the papers onto the desk. This was it. This was the truth. Emily wasn't just a liar. She was a criminal. She had been stealing from Ryan's company, and when he found out, she had tried to kill him to keep him quiet. I needed to get to the police. Now, as I grabbed the evidence and headed for the door, my phone rang. I looked down at the screen, and my blood ran cold. Unknown caller. For a moment, I hesitated. Then, slowly, I answered. Hello. There was silence on the other end. And then, a voice I knew too well. Mark, Emily whispered. Please, you have to listen to me. My grip on the phone tightened. Where the hell are you? A shaky breath. I can't tell you that. But you need to understand, it wasn't supposed to be this way. I never meant for Ryan to get hurt. I nearly laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never meant for him to get hurt? Emily, you tried to kill him. Twice. I didn't have a choice. Her voice broke. They were going to come after me. My stomach clenched. Who? She hesitated. Mark, I can't. Who, Emily? But before she could answer, the line went dead. I pulled the phone away, staring at the screen in disbelief. My heart was racing. Emily wasn't just running from the law. She was running from someone else. And that meant one thing. This wasn't over yet. I stood frozen, My phone still pressed to my ear long after the call had ended. My thoughts spiraled in a million directions. Emily wasn't just running from justice, she was running from something far worse. Someone had forced her hand. But who? I had no time to waste. I rushed out the door, heading straight for the police station with the folder of evidence in my hands. Every second felt like an eternity. By the time I arrived, my heart was pounding like a war drum. I pushed through the front doors and slammed the folder onto the nearest officer's desk. "I need to report an attempted murder," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I have proof." The officer eyed me warily before opening the folder. As he flipped through the documents, his expression darkened. "Wait here," he said, disappearing into the back. Moments later, a detective came out. "Mark, I'm Detective Harris. Tell me everything." I did. I told him about Ryan's accident, about the syringe, about Emily's call. Every detail spilled out like a dam breaking. Harris took notes, nodding grimly. "Your wife isn't just in trouble for attempted murder," he said. "She's in deeper than you think. These transactions, they match some offshore laundering cases we've been tracking. If she was involved with these people, she's in serious danger. And so are you." The air left my lungs. "What do you mean? If they know you have this information, they won't just come after her. They'll come after you, too." A chill ran down my spine. "So what do?" Harris leaned forward. "We find her before they do." The next few hours passed in a blur. The police put out an APB for Emily while I was taken into protective custody. I sat in a dimly lit room, staring at the clock as if that would somehow bring answers faster. My phone was confiscated, but all I could think about was Emily's voice, the fear in it, the desperation. Then, a knock on the door. Harris walked in, his expression unreadable. "We found her." Relief and dread warred inside me. "Where? Is she okay?" "She was picked up at a bus station outside of town," he said. "She was trying to leave the state. We have her in an interrogation room now." I exhaled shakily. "I need to see her." Harris hesitated. "You sure? I need answers." Minutes later, I was led down a hallway to a small, cold room. Emily sat on the other side of the glass, her hands cuffed to the table. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Mark." I took a seat across from her, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and something I couldn't name. "Tell me the truth, Emily. No more lies." She swallowed hard, then nodded. "It started a year ago. Ryan's business partner, Tom, he wasn't just a businessman. He was laundering money for people you don't mess with. I didn't know at first, but by the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep." My heart pounded. "How deep?" "They used me, Mark. I was the perfect front. They funneled money through accounts in my name. And when Ryan found out, he confronted me. I begged him not to say anything, but he wouldn't listen. He was going to expose everything." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. "So you tried to kill him?" "No," she cried, shaking her head. "I swear, I didn't. But they did. They sabotaged his car. When he survived, they panicked. They ordered me to finish the job before he could talk. If I didn't, they were going to kill me. And you." My stomach twisted. "Who are they, Emily? Give me names." She hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. "I don't know their real names. Just a man they call Vincent. He runs everything. He's ruthless, Mark. If he knows you have those files." Before she could finish, Harris entered the room, his face grim. "We have a problem. Ryan just woke up." I shot up. "That's good, right?" Harris exhaled sharply. "Normally, yes. But there was an attempt on his life 15 minutes ago. Someone tried to smother him with a pillow. Security intervened, but the guy got away." Ice flooded my veins. "They know." Harris nodded. "And they're not going to stop." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "They're coming for all of us." The next 24 hours were a nightmare. The hospital went into full lockdown. Police stationed outside Ryan's room. I was placed in a secure location, but sleep was impossible. Every creak, every shadow felt like a threat. And then, the call came. Harris's voice was urgent. "Mark, you need to get to the station. Now." I didn't ask questions. I drove like a madman, my heart hammering. When I arrived, Harris met me at the door, his expression grim. "We have him. Vincent." Shock hit me like a truck. "What? How?" Emily gave us a lead. We tracked his operations and set a trap. He took the bait. I exhaled in disbelief. "So it's over?" Harris's jaw clenched. "Not yet. He has connections. He won't go down easy. But at least you and Ryan are safe." Safe. The word felt foreign. After everything, could I ever feel safe again? I walked back to the holding cells, stopping outside Emily's. She looked up at me, tired and broken. Mark. I didn't know what to say. The woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible, but she had also saved my life. I turned to Harris. What happens to her? He sighed. She's cooperating. If she gives us enough, she could cut a deal. But prison is inevitable. I nodded slowly. Emily had made her choices. Now, she had to face them. As I walked out of the station, I took a deep breath of cold, fresh air. The nightmare was over. Or at least, this part of it. Because in the end, betrayal never truly fades. It just lingers, waiting for the next time you least expect it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking Reddit cheating stories happening around you.